Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mila. You're at my book Nook. I hope you enjoy your stay, and before we get into it, please subscribe if you like this video. I have so many other videos on my channel, so please check those out. Today it is a very wintry day. It was snowing pretty hard earlier on, and then I texted the work group chat and I was like, is it snowing where you guys are? And they're like, nope, it's not snowing. So when I say an hour north of Toronto, I mean an hour north of Toronto, because we have snow on the ground, which is a little ridiculous. But today I wanted to talk through my reads in September, October, and November. Oh, and it started snowing again. So my September, October, and November wrap-ups, because I don't read enough to make like individual monthly wrap-ups. And yeah, so we are in December. You're gonna see this much later, unfortunately, but deal with it. And my December wrap-up, if I even have read enough at that point, will come in sometime in January, or I'll just group the months together. So, but since December is not done yet, I may fly through a bunch of books after, when in truth I'll talk about the books that I want to get to at the end. But yeah, so in September I only read 2 books, which doesn't sound like a lot in hindsight, but it's a good chunk of books. It's 2 books is enough, 10 books is enough, 1 book is enough, a comic book is enough. You know, it's enough. If you read Franklin and Turtle 50 times, that's enough. You are a reader. I have a little sister, can you tell? So, the first book I read in the month of September was The Lake of Dead Languages by Carol Goodman. I probably have mentioned this book several times, and I really enjoy this one. It does have some dark themes, so if you are, if there are certain, there are dark themes, to do with, you know, things that I cannot name out loud, but please check trigger warnings, because this is not one of those funny dark academia books. I mean, none of them really are. Some of them are rather dark, actually. If you think about the content, it's just sort of packaged into a nice dark academia label. But this one was really good. I rated it 5 stars, and it was 432 pages. It was published in 2002. Like, that's crazy, but I thought it was really good. It keeps on getting compared to The Secret History, which I don't think is fair to either books, because they're good in their own ways. If you go into The Lake of Dead Languages thinking that you're gonna get another Secret History, you're not gonna get another Secret History. You're gonna get a book similar to Secret History in terms of genre and the way it's marketed, and the way that sort of the narrator carries the structure of the story, and the influences of ancient Greece and Rome, and studying classics. However, it's similar, like, the way that people compare this book to The Secret History is the same way that people compare If We Were Villains to The Secret History, which is not fair to any of the books. You're not going to get a Secret History 2.0, because then people will complain that it's a Secret History 2.0, which people have been complaining that it's a Secret History 2.0. But it does something that I think is it's not completely different. It definitely takes, you know, inspiration from The Secret History, but it definitely adds something different, and it goes in a different direction. So I would highly recommend. I really enjoyed this one. This one follows a Latin teacher, and way back when she was a student at the school that she teaches, there were deaths of her closest friends, and she's the only one that knows what actually happened to them. So she comes back as a Latin teacher, and all of a sudden these deaths seem to reappear again with the students that she is teaching, with those around her. It seems to be repeated, and so I thought that was really interesting. I like the way that the author went into that. Again, dark, please check trigger warnings, because there's quite a few, and it was not easy to read. It was it gets dark a little bit. The next book, so 5 stars, this is like dark academia-esque. And the other book that I read was Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. I rated this 4.5 stars. I don't really remember why I read it, like I rated it 4.5 stars. Like I really enjoyed the book. I think there was just like the fact that maybe it was YA and some of the characters felt a little bit too childish, especially with the miscommunication trope. That might have been it actually, the miscommunication trope, because it pops up a little bit. But basically, these 2 books were read because I wanted to do a dark academia reading vlog, but that didn't really work out because I can't do TBRs, as we've seen in the past several years that I've run, you know, a Bookstagram page. I can't do TBRs. That's not a not a viable thing in my head, okay? I feel too constrained, and so I want to read anything else but the books that I set out to read. So this one was really fun. This has magic, so this is fantasy, dark academia-esque, and has alchemy as well as necromancy, which I feel like is a very fall-winter activity to read about. But I really enjoyed this one. This one follows our main girl, whose name I've forgotten off the top of my head. Oh my god. Nadra. And she leaves her home to attend the prestigious Yugen Academy, and she wants to master the trade of medicinal alchemy. And she's a scholarship student, and she's basically, you know, with all the rich kids of Lunar Island, of her home. And so she meets Gregory Gray Astor, and who's like also really rich, and his dad's like really up there in the government. And so the sickness, there's a plague obviously, and it's really interesting to see how like the center of the kingdom deals with the plague versus how like the outskirts of the kingdom deal with the plague. And I thought that was really interesting, how it's just like 2 completely different worlds. And as someone that lives pretty far from, like, I'd say it's a significant change sometimes, especially with things like the weather and the way that people react to you and stuff. I'd say that she really nailed the sort of city versus middle of nowhere kind of thing. I don't really live in the middle of nowhere, but it's definitely, you know, it happens. So in October, I also read 2 books, but you'll see why I only read 2 books. And actually, one of the books I did start in September, it just rolled over to October. So the first book I read was A Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in the Sterling Archive series, and this was in preparation of Wind and Truth. I wanted to reread the whole series. Well, technically it's a reread for like the first 3 books up to 50%. Up to the 50% mark of Oathbringer, it would have been a reread, and then beyond that, it would have been just a first read. So all the reactions that you see in the upcoming vlogs, I don't know when those will be out, but they'll be out, are tried and true. I had no idea they were going to happen, and stuff like that. Like, you know, I avoided spoilers to the best of my abilities, but yeah, and somehow I managed to avoid spoilers. So this was 5 stars, obviously. This was 1,258 pages. So it's a long book, and I actually read the mass market paperback for a majority of the vlog. The vlog is actually up for this one. I put it up a while back. And highly recommend. I really like that one. And the other book that I read is Human Acts by Hong Kong. So basically Hong Kong was announced as the Nobel Prize for Literature winner, and she beat Haruki Murakami, which is a Korean woman beat a Japanese man. That's just, sweet victory. But anyways, so I decided I would read Human Acts because I read that it's one of her easier novels to transition to. I would have read The Vegetarian, but given all the stuff that I've read about The Vegetarian online, I was kind of terrified to read The Vegetarian, so I decided on something, I don't want to say on a lighter note, but something less, I think, that had less of a... that didn't have as intense a public reaction. So because of Vegetarian, people are like, whoa, shouldn't be your first Hong Kong, or like people are like, oh, this is my first Hong Kong, and they're either put off completely by it and don't read any of her other books, or they fell in love with it because of how deep it struck them, and they read all her other stuff. So I read Human Acts. I rated this 5 stars, and this is actually something that wasn't marked as with a rating for a while after I put it on my story graph. And the reason is I find stuff that is rooted in real history really difficult to rate, because it just gives you this completely otherworldly feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, because, for example, I think last year I read Minor Detail. I forget who the author is, but she's a Palestinian author. And there was a whole thing about her at like a book award ceremony, and they pulled out her book because she's Palestinian and stuff like that, and because of the, for lack of a better word, really, for you know what I mean, because of the growing tensions at the time, and well, the tensions stopped growing and they exploded, but if that makes sense. I don't want to get taken down for using the supposed words, but I'll write them on the screen maybe. And I just found that one so difficult to rate and review, because the way that it's structured, like, you know that it's set in the past, but the way that, especially the second part that follows this Palestinian woman, this unnamed main character, the way she describes living as a Palestinian woman, and just the way that she journeys all throughout her country under occupation, is just so reminiscent of today, to the point where you can take all the dates away of like the story, and it just, nothing will change. Nothing has changed since 1947, 1948. Which 1948 I think is when or 1949 is when, anyways, late 40s is when the book is set. So if you just take away the like sort of dates of when the story takes place, and you just make it undated, it just gives you this, it's the same. The story doesn't change, because the living conditions have not changed. Palestinians are still under siege, and even if, you know, the other government is like, oh, but they have freedoms, but children are also tried in military court. But yeah, so that one, Human Acts, was a very difficult book to review. Not in the sense that it was bad, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I have a whole post on it. It definitely changed my way of seeing things. And there are quotes. I have a post on it. Let me just pull you up the quotes that I highlighted and that I posted, because some of the quotes really, I was just like truly shocked in like the best way possible, because yeah. So one quote was, "Why would you sing the national anthem for people who'd been killed by soldiers? Why cover the coffin with the taguchi, as though it wasn't the nation itself that had murdered them? It happened in Gwangju just as it did on Jeju Island, in Kwantung, in Nanjing, in Bosnia, all across the American continent, when it was still known as the New World, with such a uniform brutality, it's as though it is imprinted in our genetic code." That one definitely got me. The Cambodian government's killed another 2 million of theirs. There's nothing stopping us from doing the same. In May 1980, when the demonstrations were gathering force in Gwangju, the army used flamethrowers against unarmed citizens. The soldiers were provided with lead bullets, despite these having been banned by the International Court of Law on humanitarian grounds. I feel like we all need to sit with that one for a second. But yeah, that one was fantastic. 5 stars. Again, I hesitate to give a rating just because it's so integral to like just being human. It's such an integral story to be human. It's rooted in the real world. It's not like historical fiction where, yeah, these events have happened, but they're not following entirely the person. And it's truly mind-blowing. And it's very rare. It's not super common that historical fiction is written by authors who come from the region, or whose parents have experienced these conflicts, or whose grandparents have experienced these conflicts. Usually it's an American author writing about World War II. Like, that's the most common thing with historical fiction, which is a shame, because I think if we diversify it, if we help it become more diversified, we will have more stories, and it will, I think, make the world a much better place. And yeah, that's all I will say about that without going too much into it. The next book I have which is in November, so I also read 2 books in November, which again doesn't seem like much, but I continued the Stormlight Archive series. So I read Words of Radiance, which was 5 stars, which was 1,310 pages, and then I read and finished Oathbringer, which is Stormlight 3, which was 1,306 pages, and that was also 5 stars. I was thinking that maybe I would like drop the rating down, but no, it was absolutely phenomenal. I can't really say much without like spoiling it, but I still think that Words of Radiance is one of Sanderson's best books, but in terms of like the way that Oathbringer goes, it's that one, that one is definitely, I just want to cry thinking about it. And so far in December, I've only finished 1 book, and that was Rhythm of War, which I also thought that I would bring like maybe 0.25 stars down, just like a quarter star down. Because again, it took a while, but it definitely got there in the end, and it was so worth it. And now I'm reading Wind and Truth. I'm like 360 something pages in, so we're getting there. And Stormlight 4 was 1,260 pages, and I did read all 4 of them with like a mixture of like paperback and physical. And also I did audiobook on some of them, but I don't have the Wind and Truth audiobook on like Kobo because I don't have the credits anymore because they expired. Whoops. And I'm kind of sad about it. But those are the books that I've read so far. And there are a few books that I want to like finish before the end of the year. I don't know if I will be able to finish these by the end of the year, but people do like a 10 before the end. I'm not going to finish 10 books before the end of the year, but so I did 5, and this is very vague. Like, it's not even a set TBR, If I don't get to them, it's not the end of the world. So obviously I have Wind and Truth, and with the way that I'm reading, it's going to take a while. But I also want to finish A Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin, which I started and I have not finished. I'm stuck on a branch chapter, which, if you know, you know. I really want to read A Study in Drowning, and I feel like I really need to get to that, and that will definitely, it's definitely a needed story. I need the story right now. And Descendant of the Crane by Joan He is another one that I want to read. I love Joan He's books. I've read The Ones We're Meant to Find and Strike the Zither. I do need to get a copy of Sound the Gong, but like, that's a whole other thing. And Descendant of the Crane is her debut book, and I have like the reprinted version, and I really want to get to it. And I really want to finally read Sword of Kaigen, which I have up here, and I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I might get to this one after Wind and Truth if I can muster the energy, because I think that Wind and Truth will ruin me. But yeah, and I really want to get to this one. This is actually the Museum Society book club pick, And that is it for this video. That is the wrap up. We are wrapping up the wrap up. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what books you read in the past couple months. If you've read a lot, if you've read very little, just remember that as long as you are reading and you are trying, you are a reader in my heart. And you know, don't listen to the people that say that you're not a reader, because that's just rude. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. Follow me on all my socials, and I will see you in the next one. Happy reading.